Hi everyone, welcome to the ONAP VNF onboarding video. My name is Brenda Fawcett. Let me give you a slightly bigger view of me. Hi everyone, I'm your host for the next 40 to 45 minutes, and today we're going to show how to onboard a virtual network function. I work for Amdocs Open Networks here in Ottawa, and I'm a solution architecture and a trainer. So I've just shut my video off so you don't have to look at me making faces the whole time. And let's get started. All right, so what we want to do in the next little while is show some examples of how network operators, such as TELUS, Bell Canada, Rogers, AT&T, who else, Verizon in the States and around the world, are using or plan to use ONAP. We're going to focus on the design time tools in the ONAP framework. And in particular, we're going to look at three things, and I've done them as separate videos. First, we're going to use the SDC, the Service Design and Create component, and we'll use the GUI to onboard a virtual network function. So these VNFs are network elements that operators want to deploy in their network. They may have physical versions of it deployed today, but the idea here is that they will be virtual network functions that are available from third-party vendors. You could get a VPCRF if you like from Amdocs, or you may go to other vendors such as a Cisco or an Ericsson and get a whole range of virtual network functions. Some may also be developed in-house. Some examples I've highlighted here, my pen going. They can be very simple, such as a virtual firewall, and they can range up the gamut to something like virtual customer premise equipment or virtual IMS. So that's one of the parts with ONAP, is to have a set of virtual network functions readily available that are ONAP compliant to be deployed into the operator's network. The example we'll use today is a very, very simple example. It's a multiplexer. So basically has one port coming in, and then it will route it to one of two outbound ports on customer A or customer B's network, and I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. So the first video is about onboarding a vendor's VNF and making it available in the operator's catalog so that they can then turn that into a service. The second video, also a design time example, is we're going to take that VNF. Most often operator would take more than one VNF and combine them together. So it's the VNFs plus some networking usually, and they'll model a service that they want to offer and deploy in their network. Notice I do call this a service model. That is, it's a design time object that gives you the framework or the template for an actual service when you instantiate in the network. But when we instantiate in the real network, we're going to need some more information like the customer information, customer networking parameters, etc. All right, so both of those are design time aspects of using ONAP. I do a third video, and this is going to just quickly show you how a service might be deployed. So we'll take that VMUX and we'll pretend that a customer has ordered it. So it could be a residential customer like one of you, or it could be an enterprise saying, hey, I want this multiplexer. Here is my order. Can you use your system, which in this case would be ONAP, to automatically deploy this into the operator's network. What I won't cover in these demos is monitoring of the service and managing the service, which is a big component of ONAP, the ability to automatically detect perhaps capacity issues. Think of the Super Bowl. All of a sudden we have thousands of people heading to the Super Bowl, and they need more access points at the Super Bowl. So ONAP would detect that there's increasing requests and would automatically deploy more instances of the access points to accommodate for the time period of the Super Bowl. All right, so that's one kind of simplified example. Great benefit of ONAP, but not one we're going to show in these short demos. Okay, let's get started. I said we're going to deploy a multiplexer, and this is just to give you an idea of what it is. So highlight in the red box. A multiplexer, essentially, it's going to take one input port on a network and then route it either to customer A's network or customer B's network. Not very complicated. In order to do that, our vendor, who's going to be Acme, we'll say to Acme, give us the templates, the files that we need in order to use your VNF, this multiplexer. And in this case, we're going to just have 3 files, very simple. 2 template files that are in this YAML format that define the resources that we'll need in our cloud environment. Our cloud environment today is OpenStack. It could be other things like AWS. So this one, the example we're showing, is into OpenStack. So here's our template files, and here's some default parameters when you deploy this VNF that you need to have in order for this to work. All right. So that's all it is. It will spin up a single VM, and it'll just use OpenStack resources, some 3 network ports basically on 2 subnets. Okay. So how are we going to do that? Well, in our first video, we'll first onboard this VNF from our Acme company, our vendor. So we're going to use SDNC, which is Service Design and Create, and we'll access it from the ONAP portal. So let me just get to the ONAP portal. So let me just drag and drop that over here so you can see it. So out of the box, if you were to download ONAP today and install it in some environment you had, out of the box it gives us some predefined users to play with. One of them is Carlos Santanos, and he's a designer. I forget the password if I talk while I type. And it'll allow us to log into the portal. Notice here it says eComp. This is a slightly older version of ONAP. It got renamed, so wherever you see eComp, just think ONAP. So I'll log into our ONAP portal, and Carlos, up the top right, will see a list of applications that he's authorized to use. Carlos is a designer, and so the only tool he has available right now is SDC. So it's going to log us in to the GUI for SDC. And you'll see a whole bunch of things here. This is an active ONAP environment. And in here, we want to onboard. Okay, so I'll click onboard, and you'll see there's a bunch of things in here. We'll come to that. I'm not going to search that. And what we want to do is onboard a new vendor software product. All right, so we'll click in here, and we'll give it a name. Let's call it Acme VMux. How about that? And so we'll give it a description, Acme Mux VSP. And in our system, we've dealt with Acme before, so we already have an entry in our ONAP system for Acme. So otherwise, I'd have to create that vendor entry, but we've worked with them before. And we'll select this particular MUX falls into the generic infrastructure. Okay, so let's go in there. And we'll save that. So we've created a framework for an entry for this new MUX. And so there's 2 things, and I'll just go back to the presentation for a minute. 2 things we're going to need to do here. We need to onboard the artifacts. And remember I said these could be heat templates. Depending on what your cloud environment, they could be Tosca, ZAR files. Sometimes they might include images for the software. I know if we onboard our Amdocs PCRF, we include images files, so you don't just start with an empty Linux image, you have software pre-installed. It may also include some policies or rules for monitoring that VNF. So they can be quite extensive. Ours is going to be very simple, and it's just this OpenStack heat templates. So that's one thing. We're going to need to upload the files that the vendor provides, and then we associate with a licensing model from our vendor. So really, we have our heat templates, and the licensing agreement really says, okay, for this VNF or product we're getting from our vendor, how do we measure how it's being licensed and used? Is it by user, by active user, number of vCPUs it's deployed on? Maybe you have a site-wide license. Is it by network, etc.? All right. I've already predefined that. We've worked with this vendor before, so we already have a license model. So we don't need to create that, but we would the first time we work with a vendor. Okay. So those are the things we're going to do now in the SDC. So let's select a file. And oh, lo and behold, I have a zip file here, which says Acme Mux. So great. We load it up. Oh my goodness. It gives us a few errors. What happened there? Well, let's first go back and take a look at that Mux file. If I can get back there. Okay, let's see if we can just take a look and see what was in that file that we uploaded. It looks like from what I see here, there was 2 files, cbmux, cbbase YAML, and some parameters. So if we were to look at that zip file, I've got it here. Let's just take a quick look at what are in those template files. So the first one, the base mux, and this isn't a class about OpenStack heat templates, but that's what this is. And so it lists all the parameters it needs. So you can see the inbound network, the outbound gateway. So there's some networking. Sorry, the inbound network and the outbound network. So these are, we can see they're neutron, they're OpenStack resources, they're networking resources that this template file is going to ask OpenStack to set up. That's the base. It actually doesn't create the VM, but when we deploy the MUX template, we can see here again we have parameters. Now we have an image. What image are we going to use? What flavor? A few other things. And if we go down the bottom here, we'll see that it actually creates a compute node in OpenStack, and it has 3 ports that it creates, presumably on the networks that were set up in the base stack, an inbound port, and then 2 outbound ports for customer A and customer B. Okay. Again, I'm not going to get into the details there. I just want to give you a flavor for what's in there. The third one is a parameters file. And if I look in here, it specifies, and it happens here that these are all parameters that need to be in my deployment environment, my cloud infrastructure, which is OpenStack, in order to deploy this VNF. Now, we could provide them here. There is an opportunity later to provide them. So there's different places that you can specify what the cloud environment looks like. And if I go over, and I'm just going to go over to my Horizon dashboard. This is OpenStack. So this is my cloud environment where I'm going to deploy this VNF. Just to give you an example, if I look under networks, take a little time here, under networks, come along. All right, so, all right, there we go. So we can see the public network. If we click on it, there is a unique ID, a UUID, for the public network. And if we go back, it says that's our management network. So I happen to know that my public network is the management network, and that's one of the parameters that we're feeding to our VNF. All right. So similarly, if you looked up the keys, the availability zones, flavor, and image, these also would need to be in my cloud environment. Okay. Again, this isn't about OpenStack so much. That is our cloud environment. So let's just shut that down. So that's what's in those files that we uploaded. Oh, the fourth one, just for completeness here, is really a table of contents so that when we upload it, it knows what it expects in the zip file. All right. So if we go back to our portal where we were uploading the VNF. We should see those files there. Okay, and we do. So those are the 3 files that got uploaded. As I mentioned, we did see some errors. Actually, these are warning messages. One of the things is when you defined a heat template or a Tosca model, whatever it is you're uploading from your vendor, there are particular guidelines that ONAP expects with your templates. It happens that these ones are not fully compliant. So one of the things it does is it validates those YAML files to make sure they're compliant. So that's a nice feature. It still lets us continue. It doesn't block us today, and I know that these ones will work. All right, so we've uploaded our artifacts. You can see we've got one heat template. There's another exclamation mark. We have to associate this with a license agreement. So as I said, this just says how are we going to measure how much use this VNF is getting in the network. I have a predefined license agreement for Acme, so we're just going to use the default one, and I think it's based on, I can't remember, I think it's based on counting a certain number of tokens. All right, so once we have a license agreement, oh, it didn't stick there. Let me just go back and do that. I think I forgot to save. So select our license agreement, and within a license agreement feature group, and let's just do a save, make sure that's in there. So once we've done that, we've picked our vendor, our license agreement, and we've uploaded their files. We can check this in. So there is version control in Service Design and Create, and you'll see we're on version 0.1. If we were to check it out and edit it again, it would go to version 2. When I'm finished, I then click Submit. Phew. And it looks like that worked correctly. You'll see the version tag goes to 1.0. And if we go back to our onboarding, and I think if we search for Acme, I may have a few in here, but you'll see, yeah, we'll see this VMUX 1.0, and it's an SP, so it's a software product. All right, so if we go back to our slide deck, just to finish off here, we created an Acme VMUX, and we did that by uploading a zip file that has the templates for creating whatever is needed in the cloud environment for this VNF product that we've purchased or acquired, and we associate it with a vendor license. Okay, so that's step 1. At this point, we've got it in our environment. We may still go back and forth. The vendor may say, hey, I've got a new version. Then at some point, we want to now validate that we can use this VNF in our network. We can use it to create services. So there's a little bit more rigorous testing that will go on. All right, so this is step 2. And we'll continue with the Service Design and Create tool. And in this case, we're going to import the vendor product. So we have it in there, but we're now going to import it so it's available in our catalog. And other users of the Service Design and Create can go in and use it to build services. So for this, we've kind of got a 2-role process. We're going to import it in as a vendor and say, okay, it looks good to me, but I'm not the expert, so I'm going to submit it for testing, and then we're going to have a tester come online and review it. In here, we could have some automated test suites. So one, it could say, all right, it was compliant with ONAP, but is it compliant with our standards within our network? Do we have the right cloud environments? Do we know the parameters that we would fill in for the various templates? So before we certify it, we run some tests, and then we say, yeah, the tests were good or not, and at some point it'll be certified and available in the catalog. Okay, so let's go through and do that. So we'll go back to SDC. I'm still on as Carlos, the designer. And so now I want to go to my catalog section. Actually, I want to go to home. And there's an import area. So I'm going to import this VSP. All right. And I'm going to search on Acme. Oops, Acme. Okay, so the top one here is the Acme VMUX that we just onboarded. So I'm going to click that and say, yep, a couple of things I could do. I could download the artifacts, those zip file, sorry, the YAML files, but I've already looked at them, but I could download them and review them. So that's one option. Or I could say, no, I did that, look good. I'm going to import that VSP. And it fills in the information I had, and it says create it. And so now it's essentially creating this as artifacts that are going to be available to make a service. And it was successful. Yay. I could look at the composition here, and you'll see it gives us a pictorial representation. In this case, these are OpenStack resources. So we've got a VM there and different networks and ports on that network. I could also look at the templates that are in here. You can see I've got my templates, but I've also now got the vendor license model that is associated with this VNF. All right. So I do a little review and say, as a designer, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to check that in and say, looks good. All right. And checked in successfully. If I then look for that, there's my Acme VMux. It's checked in. But before it's available, I want to submit it for testing. So I'll now submit it for testing and say, can one of the testers take a look, please? All right. All right. So that's going to move the VNF that I just checked in and imported and say, look, it's ready for testing. If I click on it as Carlos, I can't do anything because I'm not a tester. So I'm just going to log out, and we have someone else that's a tester that's predefined in the system. It's Joni Mitchell, JM0007, and same password. So let's see if Joni Mitchell, our friendly Joni Mitchell, she'll go into her service design create, and hopefully, oh, there we go. This MUX is ready for testing. And she'll go, yeah, she could take a look at the composition and do some other reviews and then say, yeah, it looks like our test suite can run on it, so let's start testing. Now, look how quick that was, eh? In our environment, we don't really have any automated test verification behind the scenes, but that's one of the things that can be added into ONAP. So at this point, it says it tested successfully. I'm pretty good with that. So as the tester, I'm going to accept that and say, looks like it's good to use. All right. So say OK. And Joni Mitchell can go home for the day because she's finished. She has nothing left to test. Let's go back. We'll log out. Let's leave. And we'll go back to our designer. I think he was 008. And it could be anyone who has, oops, I typed the password wrong because I was talking. So it could be anyone who has the design role. Let me see. There we go. And if we go back into SDC, let's see. If we look in the certified section, let's look at Acme. There's several ways to do that. And you can see now my Acme VMux is certified, which means it's ready to be used to make a service. Okay. And that's the end of part one. We've tested and certified the product. It's now available in the catalog. One thing I'll just mention, all these functions that we're doing through SDC, we're using the GUI, but there are also REST APIs. So there are test suites that you can automate the onboarding and importing. And in fact, the next steps we'll do to distribute to create the service and serve it can all be done through REST APIs. But obviously, for illustration purposes, it's a lot easier to do it manually using the GUI that's provided. Okay, so we're going to stop for now, and we'll see you on video 2.